Today our topic is on intuition, which Paramhansa Yogananda says is the soul's power of knowing God. And we have actually two ways of knowing things. We all know that. There is the intellect where we use all our five senses and we get to know things. But there is something even more powerful than that. And that is our intuition, which is limitless, which connects us to the superconsciousness, which is an infinite repository of power, wisdom, and knowledge. And it gives us the direct perception of truth. So Swami Kriyanand in one of his talks tells us that the intuition is actually a feeling, an inner knowing of the heart. And he says that with just dry intellect, understanding, we can never perceive the truth. He says, I have met so many people who do this kind of, just the intellectual, analysis. And he says that their faces looked parched. They look like wizened. And the people who have this understanding, who work from the heart, rather only from the mind all the time, they have a glow to their face. They have that joy. They look alive in the face. So there's this story, rather an amusing one, I'd like to read from Autobiography of a Yogi, when Master Paramhansa Yogananda was in the hermitage of his guru, Yukteswarji. He tells a story about Yukteswarji. So he says, in Yukteswarji's ashram, a visitor came, a celebrated Pandit, who received a jolt. With ostentatious zeal, the scholar shook the ashram rafters with scriptural lore. Resounding passages poured from the Mahabharata, the Upanishads, Bhashyas of Shankara. I am waiting to hear you. Sri Yukteswar's tone was inquiring, as though utter silence had reigned so far. The Pandit was puzzled. Quotations that have been in superabundance. Yukteswarji's words convulsed me with mirth as I squatted in my corner at a respectful distance from the visitor. But what original commentary can you supply from the uniqueness of your particular life? What holy text have you absorbed and made your own? In what ways have these timeless truths renovated your nature? Are you content to be a hollow Victrola, mechanically repeating the words of other men? I give up. The scholar's chagrin was comical. I have no inner realization. So Yukteswarji would constantly tell Yogananda that you need to have inner realization of the scriptures. Just reading the scriptures was not enough. And he would tell his disciples to maybe if they were doing Patanjali or Gita or whatever, any scripture, they would just memorize one shlok, and then for months they would work on that. They would try to understand that with intuitive inner guidance. They did not just want to get an intellectual understanding. He said that if you do that, you only increase your vanity, but no real understanding. You have to absorb the truth and make it your own, not just constantly repeating the words of others. And we see that with Lahiri Mahashaya's life as well. When any of his disciples would come to him to ask him to understand a passage in a scripture, then he would quietly just escape into superconsciousness. There he would experience the truths of that passage, and then he would propound them, he would expound them to the disciples. So this is exactly how, when Master also tells a story of where he met a person who had sent him a letter, and he said in the letter to Yogananda that you are wrong to talk about Christ and promote him in this country because he did not really exist. And Yogananda prayed mentally. He wanted to correct this person's opinion. And one day when he was sitting in the Boston library, he got an inner knowing that this person was also there. So he goes up to this person and he tells him, you know, you are wrong about Jesus Christ and the Bible. And they were true. I know it from my inner knowing. So this man is totally aghast. He said, "How did you know this is me, and how did you find me and that I wrote this letter?" He said, "Just the same way I know it was you, the same way I know that Bible and Jesus Christ existed and it's true." So the inner knowing, when we have that and when we use that with our, when we study and we are on this spiritual path, then we can never be misled, because this comes from an inner knowing. We are not just repeating the words of others mechanically in the scripture. We have an inner knowing about that. And what does the soul really want? Masters say that the souls have, all of us as souls have this deep inner longing to find God, to experience God. Do we only want to have an intellectual understanding of God? No, the soul does not really get quenched by this dry intellectual understanding. Some of you may have experienced it. I have, in a party. Maybe, you're thirsty and you get the first drink, maybe a Coke or a Sprite. You have a glass, you have another glass, but does it really quench the thirst? Ultimately, you have to go to that one little bit of water, that cup of water, to really quench your thirst. And this is exactly what it is with the inner journey as well. Just outer physical, the five senses, the intellect can basically tell us more about the physical realms. However, God lies in the subtle realms. Sankhya Yoga says God cannot be proved. God is not a mathematical equation that we can prove Him. We need to have that inner understanding, inner experience of God, and then only we feel that fulfillment, we feel that joy within us. But you might say, it doesn't seem very easy to experience God. How many of us feel we have experienced God? Superb. Yeah. So again, Yoganandji went to Yukteswarji one day with a question. He had had samadhi, he had had cosmic consciousness. You must have read in Autobiography of a Yogi. So he said, I've got all of this, but I haven't found God. So Yukteswarji is like, of course you have found God. He said, oh, no, I haven't. So Yukteswarji tells him, don't think that God is sitting in some heaven in a throne with a sword in his hand and he's something separate. The joy that we feel in our meditation, which all of us feel in our meditation, which we experience, maybe a glimpse of it, that is the experience of God. And Yoganandji says that the way we feel these 8 aspects we talk about of God, peace, calmness, wisdom, love, joy, all of these, how do we feel these? Not by our physical senses. We feel this by our intuitive power of feeling. And he says we can all develop it to such an extent that this joy and this peace is our constant companion. It's our constant experience. And he gives us guidelines on that. He says to all of us who meditate, that meditate deep. And after that, don't just jump up and go away. Stay in that silence, enjoying that peace, enjoying that joy. This is your contact with God. And the more we contact God like this, the more our intuitive power develops. And the more we take it into our daily lives, more and more we develop this muscle of intuition. And this is not just something that is coming from outside of us. The soul is a part of God. So God is peace, light. So are we. Our inner reality is joy. Our inner reality is peace and love, which is deep hidden within us. We talk about, oh yes, that joy is good which comes from within us, right? So this joy always exists within us. This love exists within us. We need to just perceive it through our intuitive power. So, once Yoganandji was in Yukteswarji's ashram with a friend who was a new disciple, and they get a letter from Yukteswarji to come and pick him up in the train station at 9 o'clock. So then what happens? A lot of people are nodding. They've read the autobiography. So I'll tell you in short. Then that disciple, he says, let's go at 9 o'clock. And Yoganandaji says, no, 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 we won't go right now. He's not coming today. So the disciple says, no, we got the letter. If you don't want to go, don't go. All this is nonsense what you're talking, and I'm going. And this disciple, sure enough, goes to the station. Yukteswarji doesn't come at 9 o'clock, and he comes back disappointed, harassed, because he just waited around for a long time. And then he comes back and he says, how did you know what happened? So Yoganandaji said, Yukteswarji sent me an intuitive message. And then he said, now is the time to go. So this friend does not believe him, but he says, okay, I'll come along with you. And Yoganandaji says, not only will he come, but before he comes, in front of him will be this boy carrying a silver jug. And Yukteswarji will tell us, good, you got my message. So this new disciple just doesn't believe this, but he goes along just to prove Yoganandaji wrong. And he goes there, and sure enough, in the train that Yoganandaji said he will come, he comes. Yukteswarji comes. Before that is this boy with a silver jug, and Yukteswarji tells them, yes, you got my message. So this disciple says, you didn't send me any message. And Yukteswarji said, yes, I did send you a message, but you were too restless to be able to receive it. So these saints, they get this clear vision. Intuition for them is a constant way of life. For them, intellect doesn't really work. They don't really need the intellect, because it is so limited. It works only on the physical realms. And the intuitive power gives them a knowing of all the possible realms of the world. Intuition we can develop when we have this silence rather than the restlessness that most of us have. A lot of restlessness, we have so much to do, agitations, we have our energy always flowing outwards. In intellect study, what do we do? To develop the intellect, we study more, we read more, we analyze, we are constantly making an effort. But how do we develop intuition? Intuition comes from silence. Intuition comes from calmness. It is a state of receptivity where we can receive what the power of intuition tells us. Everything is just available, it is there. We just need to quiet down and receive it. As the scriptures say, be still and know that I am God. And when we get that inner calmness and peace, the feelings, the inner perception of reality starts to happen for us. In fact, with the intellect, we cannot even understand many times the words of the masters. That's why Paramhansa Yogananda would mostly be silent when he was with his closest disciples. He wouldn't give them too many instructions either. He would just want them to attune with him in their inner consciousness, in their inner being, with their power of intuition. And they could then try and understand what he was saying. So we all know that words can greatly be misunderstood, right? We understand words even of the great saints according to our own understanding, our own beliefs and thoughts about it. And one example happened with Yoganandaji also, with a disciple. He tells a lady disciple one day that do not work so hard. And she actually feels tired a little bit. She notes, actually maybe I am, and if Guru is saying, then I should listen to him and reduce my work. And the next day she reduces her work a little bit. But then Yoganandaji gives her more work to do. And then she is puzzled about it, but then she says, okay, so if you want me to do more work, I'll do. But then in the evening, Yoganandaji comes and tells her sternly again, don't do so much of work. So then she's like, okay, master. And the next day she reduces. And again Yoganandaji gives her more work. Then again in the evening he tells her, don't do so much of work. Now she's quite puzzled and she's like, I really need to understand what is happening here. And she meditates on it. Intuitively she gets the understanding of what her guru is trying to tell her. So she goes up to him and says, how about if we replace the word work with service, with seva? And Yogananji smiles and he says, yes, it was fun while it lasted. It was a good show. So basically, it is only through intuitive understanding that we can really progress on the spiritual path. And we may feel, what is this intuition? Sounds like something we do not understand. But all of us have that power. If you all are here, it is because of an intuitive understanding that this is what it is, this is right for me, and this is giving me that joy that all of you feel, that love that all of you feel. And happily, Master gives us ways of constantly increasing this intuitive power so that this joy, this love experience becomes a perpetual experience in whatever we do in our lives. Jai Guru.
So intuition versus intellect, or intuition is the way to know God. In Master's Paramhansa Yogananda's Samadhi poem, he says, the storm of Maya stilled by the magic wand of intuition deep. That he very clearly states how important is intuition. Only through intuition we can still the storm of Maya. And he, in another place, in Autobiography, he explains that Sri Yukteswar guided him how to summon the blessed superconscious experience at will and how to transfer it to others if their intuitive channels are developed. So if anybody has a complaint that I haven't reached Samadhi yet, then we have to develop our intuitive channels. And how can we develop the intuitive channel? By meditation, of course. But let's look at a few examples of how intuitive the masters and great disciples were. Swami Kriyananda himself, towards the end of his life, said that I do not know where Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins, because he was so in tune with his Guru. And that intuitive attunement got him to do all the great work which he has done, which we all know. We wouldn't be here if not for his intuition and to know how he should serve his master. Another advanced disciple, Sister Jnanamata, she was, most of her life she was suffering from one ailment or other. Sometimes she was so ill that she couldn't go to Paramhansa Yogananda's Satsang. But when Yogananda visits her after the Satsang, she would say to him, I liked the way you explained this point in the Satsang. And Yogananda would ask her, oh, you heard that, didn't you? That was her level of intuition. And Rajashri Janakananda was progressing very fast spiritually. And at one point, he announced that this day I am glad to announce that Rajashri Janakananda has been liberated. And somebody asked him, why is it how can he develop so fast? Why aren't everyone else progressing spiritually so fast? And Paramhansa Yogananda replied, because he knows how to listen. And what is this listening? How can we listen God's words or Guru's words? Through deep meditation. That is a story which is widely shared, you might have heard already. During the recession in United States, the jobs were scarce and there was a opening for a person in a telegram office. And since there was just only one opening, but since it was recession, there were so many people who applied for that job and who showed up on that day. And some of them were worried about their situation, others were anxious about how the interview would be, but one guy was very silent. And as he was silent and inward, waiting to give his best in the interview, he heard a tapping noise, a clicking noise coming out of the interviewer's room. and he understood that it was Morse code. And in that Morse code, he was sending out a message saying, if you want this job, just come in and claim it. It is yours. And he walked inside and he got the job. The interviewer came out of the office and said, hey, we filled up the position. And others were asking him, how? You did not even interview anybody. But then he explained what had actually happened. That is listening. And why he was able to listen, it was because he was not worrying or he was not anxious, he was still. And what is meditation? The very definition of meditation is when your mind is still and heart is open. And heart is the way to God. You can always find out, even the 8 aspects of God, majority of them, like peace, joy, they all have to do with feelings. The most significant moments in your life, memorable moments in your life has to do with heart. It doesn't have much to do with the intellect. Like you might have watched a beautiful sun rising from a mountain peak. The first time you saw the ocean and you had fun with your friends in the beach, everything is related to heart. And intellect, although important, does not understand the way of heart. There's a silly joke we explain, which was shared in school days. A mathematics professor was explaining congruent theorem to his students, which is A is greater than B, B is greater than C, so A is greater than C. Give me an example. So one student says 5 is greater than 4, 4 is greater than 3, so 5 is greater than 3. And another a student who wanted to pull a prank said, so can I give an example? Yes, of course, go ahead. And he said, I love you, you love your daughter, so I love your daughter. Silly as it may sound, but intellect cannot, or theorems and words cannot express the ways of heart. Paramhansa Yogananda says that you can write thesis about oranges. You can publish volumes of books about orange. Your senses, the faculties, will tell you how the orange looks, how the orange feels, what the orange's color is. But unless you experience it, you will not be able to enjoy what an orange is. So similarly, if that is the situation for an orange, for God, definitely we cannot read about him, we cannot just talk about him, he has to be felt. And intuition is the way to feel God within ourselves. And how to develop intuition is a very important discussion we always have. As we said, intuition is a very calm feeling, and that calmness, which we can be attained through meditation, when the deafening demands of ego comes to a standstill, then in the mind of lake, where there is no ripple of thoughts, we can perceive the reflection of the moon or the soul in the mind's lake. And that, to go deep into meditation, and through that meditation, we can intuitively feel God, know God. That inner stillness is very important, and meditating on Om is a very good way to develop your intuition. Like Vasudha shared the story of Sri Yukteswarji sending a message to Paramhansa Yogananda and his friend. The message was sent to both, but only Yogananda was able to receive it. Similarly, Om is always available. It is not directed to specific people. It is universally existing vibration, but those who meditate on it will be able to receive and perceive it. And that can be applied in your daily life. When you take decisions, when you take small and big decisions, when you apply that, tuning in to Om, which you have practiced in meditation to the small task in hand, you will be able to take the right decision. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says that to you who are free from the carping spirit, I shall now reveal wisdom sublime. To you who are free from carping spirit, the complaining nature of we all have, I know I have, but we all have certain level of carping spirit in us to complain when things do not go the way we want to go. And Krishna says that that very nature, that carping spirit which arises from the likes and dislikes of our heart, is what blocks the intuition. When we are free from that, we will be able to develop our intuition. And most importantly, how do we know that we are in tune? It's very simple. God is harmony. If in any situation or in any project or in any part of your day, if harmony is absent, then we are not in tune with God. And Paramhansa Yogananda says this in two different places in Autobiography of a Yogi. God is harmony. And let me quote few examples from Yogananda's life. Yogananda, when he first met Swami Sri Yukteswar, he asked him to resume the college education. But did Yogananda want to? He did not want to. So what he said, I am going to continue to stay in Benares. And Yukteswarji did not insist on anything. He left back. But he realized that day by day in Mahamandal Hermitage where Yogananda was living, it became so hostile that he could not stay there anymore. And again, Yukteswarji wanted him to Yogananda to stay with him and be trained, but Yogananda wanted to go to Himalayas and meditate there. And we all know the sleepless saint story and how it turned out. He was sent back to his master. And Yogananda wanted to go to Kashmir for a vacation, and Swami Sri Yukteswar did not encourage it. And he did not listen to his master, and he went to his one of his friend's house to ask help to borrow the servant from that house. And Yogananda writes in Autobiography of Yogi, when he said to him, I want to go to Kashmir, I am planning to go to Kashmir, his friend says, oh, very nice, can I offer any help to you? But then when he asked, can I borrow your servant, he writes that the person got up so fast from his chair that the chair fell and the smoking pipe fell and papers flew. It caused an earthquake there. Suddenly there was a change of attitude and things did not work. It was not harmonious in his planning. And finally we know the story that he got Asiatic cholera and then he was saved by Swami Sri Yukteswar, and that's the reason he wasn't allowed to go to Kashmir. And at the same time, when Yogananda, of course, he's an avatar, he knows all these stories, he's just playing it out for us to learn from his life. And when his guru said, go to United States of America and go there to spread the words of Kriya Yoga, he says the funding, he didn't have any. God sent him without any effort. And he also quotes, he miraculously crossed all the red tape hurdles which was put before him. It was World War II. Getting a passport and visa was not easy, but he got it. And when he wanted to come back, when Yukteswarji called him, when he wanted to come back from India, the trip was funded. So when we listen to our Guru, when we listen to our God intuitively through meditation, and when we act on it, when there is harmony and smoothness in our action, then we are in tune. If there is friction, if there is a turmoil in the road we have taken, then we are not in tune with God. So that is a question which we can ask ourselves. Is today my day my work? Is it harmonious? If yes, we are in tune. Thank you.